Yo, what up everybody, it's Stewart, and for the next 2 weeks I am going to just kind of brief y'all on some of my side projects that I have. This week's video will be about my fantasy world, so all my projects that I've got planned out as of now for my Lands of the Abyss universe of short stories, novels, series, whatever. And the next week's will be more for my stories I'll be writing as Peter Gracie, which will be my non-fantasy stories and stuff like that. So as of right now, I have 20 projects as a whole. There is one that's a short story collection, which I'll get to that later. But that collection being counted as just one project, I do have 20 projects altogether I am currently working on. And it just happens to be, right now, 10 of them are for D.L. Stewart, and the other 10 are for Peter Gracie. So, like I said, this week's video, I will be talking about the 10 projects that I am currently working on as D.L. Stewart, which is my fantasy world, which is what most of y'all probably know me for, because that's the only thing I've published and what my main focus is. I'm not going to go into too much detail on each of these stories. I'm just going to kind of briefly talk about it. I do intend later on going on more detail for each story individual, but that will be exclusive for my Patreon. So if you would like to know more about those, click my Patreon link down below and go support me on there for as little as $1, and you will be able to see those videos once those are up. The first 3 projects I am currently working on right now as D.L. Stewart is the rest of my METAGORE series. There's Sovereign Duties, which I've got the first draft almost completely done, and then Rise of Power, which is book 3, which I'll be starting sometime this month, and then Inflamed Insignia, which will be the final book of the series. It's a 4-book series. So if you know anything about the first book, the Lord over METAGORE dies and a new one gets elected, and the Grand Dukes are kind of upset about the whole election process, and they think that they should have more of a right to the throne than the person that was elected, and a civil war breaks out. All of that, as well as the war, is wrapped up into the first book. Book 2, Sovereign Duties, is kind of the aftermath and, trying to rebuild, I guess, in a way. I'm trying to rebuild their armies that got wiped out, and then there are some people that still are not happy with the outcome of the war, and you kind of get this build up to another war. Book 3 is that second war that kind of gets built up to. So Rise of Power is a new war, and that continuation of that storyline that way. And then book 4 is the ending of that war and the final agreement on who the rulers should be, and wrapping everything up in a sense. The 4th project I had planned for D.L. Stewart is Tagrax Halls, and it is like a prequel, kinda, not really. It's like a spin-off prequel to my METAGORE series. It is like the origin story of Brighton and Kalama and how they met. It's kind of mentioned a little bit in my METAGORE series. It's kind of hinted at it, like when they met, it was a very bad place, it was a bad time, stuff like that. Not going into too much details. And I had originally started this as a collaborative story with a lot of different authors, and then it was kind of fell out, and then it was going to be me and one other author, which is the one who kind of created Kalama's original character, which wasn't Kalama, it was Topaz. But the background origin, I still kind of wanted that idea. It's different than what it had originally been, but I wanted to still kind of showcase that, since I had kind of mentioned it in the first book. I kind of tweaked it a little bit just so it would fit more my style, more my world. So Tagrax Halls will be that origin story. Brighton is not this old lord that's about to die, like he is at the beginning of the first book of METAGORE. He's very young. He is just a little bit older than what Cornelius is in the book. But you can kind of see the difference between Cornelius being a young lord and Bratton being a more, you know, positive young lord or whatever. Cornelius is kind of very unsure and kind of overwhelmed really easily, and Bratton was not that type of person. So you kind of see that contrast between them, since, or even though Cornelius isn't in it, if you've read Battle for METAGORE or whatever, my METAGORE series, you know that Cornelius, how he is. So you kind of see how Bratton was in that position, being a young lord. And also you get to see more of the MCA kind of being developed, which is something that is mentioned in the first book of my METAGORE series, as well as I know it's mentioned in the second book as of right now. And it's not really explained what it is. You just know it's like a pact or an agreement, treaty type ordeal between the different lands of METAGORE. And the story of Tagarac's Halls kind of takes place when Bratton is still developing the MCA, the METAGORE Compression Act. So you kind of learn a little bit more about that. And I'm planning on the very end of the book being him and the other rulers of the lands signing it. I don't know for sure, but I do intend for that to be the case as of right now, even though that's really not really tied into the story plot itself. I might kind of make more mentions in it than what I have. I haven't really wrote that much of it, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. The fifth and sixth project that I will be working on as D.L. Stewart will be The Gift of a Child and possibly The Ballad of a Child. I'm still not really certain if I would really want to write The Ballad of a Child. The Ballad of a Child. I do have some good ideas for it if I do, but I'm just not sure when. I have thought about if I do decide to do both to release them at the exact same time. Thought that would be kind of cool. I know a lot of people do companion novels, and they do one, shortly after the other. But I would like to do it like the exact same time, since the two stories take place at the same time. I just thought it'd be cool to release them at the same time. But I think for a good companion novel, and how I tend to approach these would be the plot and the storyline are completely different. It's two characters. They're both going to be in both books, but they're not going to be that much involved in each book. They're just going to make appearances here and there, and that's about it. It's not really like a side character and a main character. It's two totally different, And The Gift of a Child, it follows Tristan Ratley on his journey. His best friend's sister gets taken from them because of their laws, and he goes on this journey to try to get her back. And on his journey, he comes across a particular character a couple of times, but she doesn't really play that big of a role in the story. You just know that she's just kind of there or whatever. And then in The Ballad of a Child, it's from that chick's point of view, which is Josie Ballard, which is one of The Ballad of a Child. And you follow her, and her mission is completely different than what Tristan's mission is. It has nothing to do with the child, really. It has nothing to do with, anything that was going on in the first book. But those same interactions, like when she kind of appears in his story, that's when he's appearing in hers. So you can tell it's taking place at the same time, but the plots and stuff are completely different. I know for The Gift of a Child, I want to write it with a lot of red herrings and stuff like that. So a lot of like misdirection, misleading narrative and folklore that, the characters believe that's not really true and stuff like that. And then I think in The Ballad of a Child, I might do the same thing, but from, a different perspective. So you get more of the world building and more of the folklore and mysteries and this and that. And you try to figure out what's real and what's not, I guess. I thought that would be kind of a cool approach to go with that story. The seventh project I am currently working on is Ajia. Ajia is the only one out of all 20 of the projects that I am not 100% sure on what the title will be. That's what I've kind of got as a placeholder title. And usually for me, I know pretty well what my title is going to be before I ever start. I don't really have a hard time writing a title or coming up with a title for a book. And I'm pretty fixated on the title being Ajia, but I'm not really sure if it will stay like that. I might get a better idea as I'm writing the story. I'm not really sure. But I do have a cover in mind. If it is Ajia, and the negative and positive spacing on the cover with the word Ajia being, things happening inside the letter or whatever. I think that'd be pretty cool, and how it would go across it. With saying that, all those covers that I've been showing over here, none of them's the real cover. I'm going to be having is just a placeholder I put up on my website so people know what projects I am kind of working on or intend to work on in the future. But none of these are. The picture I have for Ajia right now is the flag of the Kingdom of Ajia, which is an island kingdom. And the basis of that story, I came up with it just a little after I came up with the idea for METAGORE, or my METAGORE series. And it was going to be a physical bouts of competitions or something, like Olympics or gladiatorial type ordeal, for men to become eligible to marry a woman of power, since Ajia as a kingdom, as a culture, they perceive women to be more superior than men. So men would try to become royalty by marrying whoever the queen is, or one of her understudies type people. Not understudies, but marry the princess, marry some of her council women or whatever. So that's what I planned on doing. And like I said, this idea came to me like around 2015, 2016, somewhere there. Around the same time as my METAGORE series did. I didn't really have much of it fleshed out, but I had that idea, and then Jenna Morassi came out with the Savior's Champion, and I was like, this is kind of similar, even though that is more to marry the Savior who has magical abilities, and then my story wouldn't. But it was still pretty, a competition to marry a woman of power in a sense. So I was like, I'm going to put that on a back burner for a long time. I don't want people thinking I just kind of try to rip her off or anything, because that's not the case. I have the Savior's Champion. It's up there. You can't see it. It's kind of behind me. But I love the book, I'm not in no way trying to rip her off or rip off her story or whatever. This is my story, my characters. So I've kind of put that on a further back burner as of right now, that I'll do later when that hype's not all going on, because I don't want to try to take away from her hype or whatever, and people be like, oh, well, this book's just like this book, whatever. If my book is compared to hers, that's amazing. I enjoyed her book, but I'm not trying to take any of that flame away from her and try to make people think that I'll try to rip her off or something like that. That's not the case. But yeah, the 8th project that I plan on working on as D.L. Stewart is A Dire Fall. And this is another one of my earlier ideas I had for my world. It takes place partly in the kingdom of Penora and then the kingdom of Direfell, which is where I got the title A Dire Fall. Direfell, Dire Fall. So I thought that was kind of cool. That's kind of why I picked that title. But also the plot as a whole kind of expresses a dire fall as well. And what the story is in Penora, women and children are perceived to be property. And it follows this female protagonist from Penora, late teens, early 20s, somewhere in there. And she gets caught, doing illegal stuff, stealing, whatever. And she gets punished, and instead of being punished like most people for a reason, she gets sent to Direfell to work as a spy for the king of Penora. So while she's in Direfell, she starts to meet some other people and find out that their culture is not the same as theirs. and women aren't treated as poorly as they are in Panora. And then she kind of, starts, I guess, becoming a traitor to her king who sent her over there, in a sense, without going into too much detail. So the dynamic between two kingdoms and her working as an undercover spy but not really being a spy, really, she's just kind of there, type ordeal is the premise of that story. The ninth project that I plan on working on is the Conquest of the Long Isle, which takes place on the land of Ishane, which is broken up into 6 regions. Ishane is referred to as the free land. They don't have governments or anything. It's basically every man for themselves. They like being free. You could go commit a crime. There's no punishment for it in a sense. But at the same time, it kind of evens itself out, because if you go kill somebody and not get punished for it, that might sound cool if you get pissed off at somebody, but that also doesn't prevent somebody else from doing that to you. So you're kind of cautious, and it's more, faith-based. It's like, I hope and I believe that you're not going to hurt me, so I'm not going to hurt you type ordeal. And there are some rougher groups of people, but as a whole, it kind of balances itself out. So the Conquest of the Long Isle is a foreigner comes from another land, and they want to conquer the Long Isle, Ishane. They want to, actually build a government there, and they want to rule over portions of it. And I've thought of making this into a series. I'm not sure yet, but since it is so long, the series would just start from them on one end of the land, the island. It's not really an island, it's a long continent, but they would start on one end of it and kind of slowly conquer, and the series would just follow them as they progressed across the land. So yeah. And then the 10th and final project that I am working on as D.O. Stewart is a collection of short stories called Lore. I don't know why I said Lure. Lore, which is the Lands of the Abyss short story collection. I don't really know all of the short stories that I plan on writing for it. I do know that I would like to write a short story, and I have actually started on it, for the creation of the Dresdes, since the Dresdes were not created like all the other races were in the beginning of existence and stuff, or as the beginning, however long portion it was. Like all the other races, they were created a long time later, and it's more of a curse. So I plan on exploring that and writing that as a short story to put in there, as well as the Flood of Flames, which is an event that happened in METAGORE, particularly in Centuries, when the volcano Mount Dumas erupted and basically torched the entire kingdom and part of Ringwood's kingdom with wildfires and stuff. So I was going to write a short story of that, of just a regular... I was thinking about maybe doing it from a kid's point of view, or I've started it just from a kid's point of view. His parents come in, kind of wake him up, and they're like trying to get out because, the volcano's already erupted and the wildfires are getting closer to their home, and it's just the panic state of the family trying to grab their stuff and get out as fast as quick as they can, so they're not killed in the wildfire. So that's what that short story is, or it might even be more of a flash fiction. That's not really going to be that long, but that is another story I do plan on putting in there. So those are kind of some of the ideas I've thought of for my short story collection. I don't really know how many of those I will actually do, or how many will be added to that, or how many of those might actually turn into their own books later on. But at the moment, that's what I'm planning on. So yeah, that is all 10 of the projects I am planning on working on as D.O. Stewart, as of right now, till whenever I get those done, or until I think of some other stories. But as of right now, that's all the ideas I have for my fantasy world at the moment. I do plan on eventually writing something from all the different lands. So if you liked all these, give the video a thumbs up, thumbs down. If you didn't, I really don't care. You do you, I do me. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed, ring that bell, and come back next week and I will talk about the 10 projects that I will be intending on working on as Peter Gracie, which will be my pen name for all my non-fantasy works. So yeah, that's about it. All my links are down below. You can go buy my debut novel, The Battle for METAGORE, on Amazon. All that links down below. There's a link of other author tubers down below. You can go check that out, as well as a link to a schedule for live streams and stuff like that if you want to participate in any of those. So yeah, that's about it. Peace out. Yelly. Everybody love everybody.